Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. It is that time once again to talk about the best or most OP champions of the current patch 7.8. There are definitely going to be a few familiar faces with a few new ones popping out as well. So as usual, if you guys end up enjoying this type of video, then let me know by simply hitting that like button. And also this video will be made in collaboration with Pro Guides, a very familiar name. It is a website that tries to improve your overall League of Legends gameplay and knowledge by giving you a bunch of tips, tricks, tutorials, and things like that. Pro Guides has also released a completely new way of using their feature Genius, which allows you to connect to a challenger player anytime. I highly recommend trying out the new feature. There will be a link to them down below in the description that I highly recommend checking out. But without much further ado, let's get right into the best champions of this patch. So to start things off, I actually want to talk about Recon, one of the two new champions that just came to League of Legends. Now I don't necessarily think he's the most OP or the best champion of this current patch, but since he's new, I feel like it'll be more interesting to start things off with him instead. So naturally he's a support champion, but I'm seeing him banned quite frequently because a lot of people are saying that he's actually pretty damn strong. And I can definitely see why. I mean, he's got sustain and harass in the laning phase, he has probably one of the best gap closing and just overall initiation of support champions in general at the very moment. He's very hard to stick to, he's very hard to follow, and his ultimate I actually feel like is really damn good if used properly in a team fight. I mean, all in all, he's just really hard to kill and just really hard to stop and just kind of follow him around and keep track and just really know exactly what he'll do next. But obviously if you combine him with Xayah, well, I feel like Recon actually benefits a lot more of being with Xayah than the other way around with Xayah being with Recon. Because I mean, sure, Xayah's W also applies to Recon, which is pretty good, but at the same time, having Recon's E ability being essentially double the range makes it nearly impossible to know where he'll come from next, where he's gonna go next, and just really what he can do. All in all, just him actually having a pretty good kit and feeling pretty damn strong on top of course, being a new champion, so naturally, not a lot of people know how to play against him yet, means he's definitely a ban-worthy champion. But let us take a quick look at Recon's build. So Curse of the Colossus seems to be the keystone of choice, though you can definitely go Windspeaker's Blessing instead if you feel like playing more of a supporty playstyle rather than a frontline initiation tanky playstyle. On top of this, you want to run a bunch of armor in your runes as well. For items, you want to go pretty standard support page, just a bunch of utility and shielding kind of items. And for your abilities, you want to max out your Q first, followed by your E, followed by your W. But moving along to the next champion we'll be talking about, might as well stay down on the bot lane for just a bit longer and talk about Lulu. Lulu has been probably the best support for several patches in a row now, because at first she was the answer to the very popular assassin meta. And even though the assassins are still very much there, because we still have Talon, we still have a bit of Zed, LeBlanc, Kassadin, Rengar, Khazix, she is still very strong because of these champions and she's still a fantastic answer. But at the same time, she's just a really good champion because she has really good lane pressures, a lot of damage, insane amount of utility, her polymorph is just obnoxious to deal with, and essentially she just brings a lot to the table that many other supports at the moment just cannot bring, nor as reliably. So Lulu at the very moment, at least in my games, is pretty much always picked or banned. It's very rare that she'll go across the table and no one will pick her up. So if you're a support main, I highly recommend that you try her out and learn her at the moment while she's very strong before she gets nerfed. But with all that being said and done, let's take a quick look at the Lulu build. For her, without question, you want to go Windspeaker's Blessing of your keystone of choice. For your abilities, you want to max E, then W, then Q, and then you want to, for your runes, run a pretty standard support page followed by some pretty standard support items. But next, let's talk about Lucian, a champion that plays with these support champions that we just finished talking about. Ever since Lucian's slide buffs and the Blade of the Rune King changes, he's become extremely popular once again, sitting at about almost a 50% play rate of all the ADC champions, while still maintaining one of the highest win rates, which is insanely impressive. He's just an insanely consistent champion. He's got the actual good burst potential with the Blade of the Rune King. He's got the armor shred with his ult combined with Black Cleaver. He's got burst potential. He's got consistent damage. He has long range potential with his ultimate. He has a lot of CDR, so he can be very mobile as well. And all in all, just a very good champion, very well rounded, offers a lot to the team, and if ahead is very difficult to stop because of the Blade of the Rune King plus the Black Cleaver combo. All in all, very strong, very fun to play, and just essentially extremely effective. So with all that being said and done, let's take a quick look at the Lucian build. Fervor of Battle is your keystone of choice without any questions whatsoever. You want to run a pretty typical flat AD and attack speed ADC page as well. For your items, you want to go the Blade of the Rune King with the Black Cleaver, and then either go Zerker boots or maybe something like Merc boots or the Armor boots. Kind of depends on what you're facing. After that, you finish it off with just some standard ADC items like a Last Whisper, Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire Cannon, or Static Shiv. Or you can definitely go the Phantom Dancer instead. But now let's make our way over to the jungle because there's definitely a few champions as per usual to talk about in this role. The first one I'll talk about, and still probably the best one at the moment, is going to be Ivern. Now I actually rarely see Ivern because he's literally almost always banned. But naturally he's banned for a good reason. I mean, he's easily one of the best, if not the best jungler at the very moment. He provides a lot of utility, he's insanely hard to kill, and he makes a lot of the popular ADCs like Lucian, Twitch, maybe Kog'Maw just even stronger. He's also insanely unpredictable to play against, so you can't really counter jungle him too well, and he can counter jungle you pretty damn well as well. And all in all, he's just too much of a weird factor to have to face, so I mean, most people prefer just not to face him and just to have him banned to make things overall easier and just sort of more predictable. And on top of that, Daisy is still insanely tanky and insanely strong and very hard to get away from. So all in all, just no one wants to have to deal with Ivern. But with all that being said and done, let's take a quick look at Ivern's build. So I've talked about his build for several videos now and nothing really has changed, so if you've watched the previous videos then you know exactly what's happening here. Wind speakers for your keystone, your runes are still the same, your items are still somewhat of a mix of AP and support, and then your abilities are going to be E, Q, W in that order. But moving along in the list, also in the jungle, we have Khazix. Now, Khazix, along with Rengar, who's going to be in the honorable mentions, have been pretty much top tier junglers for several patches. And even though Rengar has actually gotten nerfed a few times, he's still considered to be insanely good, especially if he gets ahead. But for this video, I wanted to specifically focus a bit more on Khazix instead. So all in all, he's still a champion that I personally play in the jungle if I'm ever autofilled into the role, because I mean, he still has a pretty damn good clear. He's got some solid gank potential since he does have a gap close pretty much since level 3. And if you have a good team, actually evolving your W second potentially is very effective because it offers an insane amount of utility for an assassin champion. His damage is still absolutely ridiculous if he finds anyone in isolation, to the point where he can probably 1v1 almost every champion. And just like assassins in general, if he ever does get ahead, he becomes a very big problem. So he's also one of those champions where you either just hope you don't face him, you hope you counterpick him, or you just hope that he's banned, because again, if he gets ahead, very difficult to stop. But let's take a quick look at the build that you want to run when playing Khazix. So you still want an assassin type approach, going warriors with either red or blue smite, black cleaver for the extra damage and CDR and just tankiness. You can go another lethality item, so for instance like Duskblade, which I really like because it synergizes well with his ultimate, and then you want to transition in sort of a pseudo tanky type items, maybe like a Dead Man's Plate or even the new Guardian's Angel, especially once it comes out. But the last champion I want to talk about that's in the jungle is going to be Warwick. Now, I've talked about Warwick before in honorable mentions, but I feel like he's definitely a champion that's worthy of being in the top list. I've always honestly thought that Warwick was a really good champion because all you have to do is really just get Titanic Hydra, get those tanky items going, and you're just really hard to stop. His Q ability heals for an insane amount as well, to the point where you almost always think you're gonna kill him, but he just somehow manages to live at 10% or 20% HP. His E ability scales really well since it's percent damage reduction, and it has a great CC AoE as well, which synergizes with his ultimate very effectively. And I mean, all in all, he's got a good engage, he's got an insane amount of healing, he's got good stick potential, and he's just very obnoxious to deal with as he scales with the tank items. But let's take a quick look at the build that you want to do when playing Warwick. So it seems like Fervor of Battle is still the keystone of choice because it just works with your ultimate and it gives you those free stacks easily. You want to go for very tanky items like Cinderhulk, Titanic Hydra, and then things like Dead Man's Plate, Spirit Visage for the extra HP regeneration, and maybe like a Guardian's Angel. And for your abilities, you want to mash your Q first, followed by most likely your W and then your E. But now let's make our way over to the mid lane, where there's two champions to talk about, the first of which being Kassadin, arguably the best mid laner at the very moment. Ever since the buffs happening to Kassadin, where they increased his E damage and they also kind of bug fixed his W, he's been getting more and more popularity, on top of also being an answer to the very popular LeBlanc and just other AP mid laners. The scary thing about Kassadin is that he can snowball really damn hard, and if he gets to the very late game where his ultimate is rank 3, he can be teleporting around the team fights literally every second. And on top of this, getting Lichbane, which constantly will keep proccing every time he ults or every time he uses this W, has a lot of synergy, is very hard to stop, and he's just extremely mobile to where you're kind of questioning what do you really do. But on top of this, if there's a lot of AD champions on the enemy team, Kassadin can easily swap over to a more tanky armor type build, going for the Iceborne Gauntlet and going for slightly more armor items, maybe like a Dead Man's Plate as well. So he just has a few options. He can be played mid lane, top lane, and if he gets ahead, he's really damn hard and annoying to stop, and his laning phase is surprisingly a little bit annoying because he essentially has a point and click harass where he'll also get a shield, which usually will help him win the trade. But let's take a quick look at Kassadin's build. So Deathfire Touch is your keystone of choice because you're not really gonna proc Thunderlords in the laning phase up until at least level 6. And on top of this, for items, you want to almost always go Rod of Ages because it just gives you the tanky stats that you need since you are essentially a melee assassin, followed by the Lichbane with the great synergy and the typical standard AP items. Now the final champion to talk about before I go into the honorable mentions is going to be LeBlanc mid. Now LeBlanc got nerfed a few patches ago and everyone, including myself, thought she would be essentially a dead champion. But it definitely seems like the opposite at the very moment, because not only does she have really damn good wave clear with her new Q ability since it does insane amount of damage to minions, but people have essentially found a new build to play with her, going for that first item, Gunblade, because it gives her not only just added burst, but the slow from the item also helps you land your E ability as well, which is extremely vital to your overall burst combo. And this in itself literally is the main reason as to why LeBlanc is just really good, especially if you combine it with a Lich Bane. I mean, you're essentially Wing in, you Q, Gunblade, auto attack for the Lich Bane with an E, and you're probably going to be chunking your target if not killing them. But what makes this even better is the fact that it's insanely safe to do, and it's really not that difficult either. So I'm sure this comes as to no surprise that LeBlanc is extremely strong and popular at the very moment, and I'm sure you've been seeing her quite frequently. But let's take a look at the build very quickly. So Thunderlords is still going to be your keystone of choice, and for items like I said, Gunblade being your first item, followed by your boots of choice and most likely a Lich Bane. After that, you can go some typical AP items like a Rabadon's, Void Staff, Zhonya's, or even a Luden's Echo. Now before I end off the video, there's going to be 3 honorable mentions, the first of which is going to be Graves. Now I decided to bring Graves all the way down to the honorable mentions because, well, even though he's still strong, I wouldn't say he's as strong anymore because there are some counterpicks since now he no longer gets magic resistance from True Grit. But this doesn't mean that he's a weak champion either. He's easily still one of the best junglers. I just thought I'd make room for other champions. Following him, we also have Rengar. Now Rengar and Khazix always go hand in hand, and I always like to just keep one of the two in the main list. So in this case, I decided to talk about Khazix, but Rengar easily still one of the best junglers and one of the best snowballing assassin champions in the game. But the final honorable mention is going to be Aatrox, which may come as a surprise to some of you, but I feel like after all the consistent buffs, he's been slowly rising in popularity, and for good reason. I mean, his dueling potential is actually getting pretty damn high to the point where you might want to start being scared of him. And I'm definitely getting more and more curious as to how strong he actually might become, because his win rate at the moment is actually pretty good, around 52%. So just a champion to watch out for. But either way guys, that is about it for this video. There you have it, the best champions of patch 7.8. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit that like button to show your support. Make sure to share this with your friends as well so everyone else knows what's strong this patch. But I thank all of you so much for watching, and I hope to see you for the next video as well. Peace.